if the most significant thing that the PFN has is that public protest, then what we have is too shallow. Yes, I'm saying it. If the most significant stuff we have to offer at this level of the country, with this level of decadence and menace that is going on in this nation, with the sole agenda to depopulate the nation, with the sole agenda to see that a lot of things are being brought down, if the only thing that PFN as an organization has to offer publicly to the people is what's it called, is public protest, joining activism, then what we have is too shallow. It's too shallow. And before you rise up to start attacking me on this thing, you ought to know that we have a position and posture in this world. We are not primarily people who follow the trends or what is going on. There is an aspect. Christians are ambassadors actually, and what do we mean by ambassadors is that we are heavenly representatives. We represent the state of heaven on earth. So when things are not going the way it should go, what is expected from us is not just what every other person is supposed to do. Am I speaking against coming out to protest and the like? That's not what I'm talking against. But what I'm talking against is that if the only thing we have publicly to offer, or if the only thing we want to put our footprint with all boldness is public protest, then we are not better than the very dark mans and the likes, the Peter for Nigeria and the likes. We are not better than them. We are not better than them. And I'm saying this thing again because of there is an emphasis that is resting upon the church to produce the people who is expected to transform the nation. Transformation of the nation is resting, of our nation, it is resting upon the church. And if we are not doing, I'm not saying that it is not being done. I'm saying that if we don't have a public declaration that we are raising an army that is coming to curb the menace that is going on in the public and social spaces, if we don't have the public declaration that we are raising and empowering these people, much more than we are fighting against what is going on, then we are not really doing the kingdom a service. We are doing a disservice. And not just doing a disservice, we want to look like, so that it will not look like they did not say anything. In fact, most of the time, so how God responds is that God raises men. God doesn't respond by trying to. In fact, in the book of Exodus, scripture says, I have heard your cries. So how God responds by hearing the cries of his people is by sending a man. So what do we, it's my own personal concern, which somebody can take or somebody can decide to leave. What do we ought to do in this kind of situation is that we ought to intentionally sit and work towards raising men. Any other thing outside we sitting and raising men with something that will make us either look politically correct. However, in God's agenda, we might not be in the order at which he wants us to be. Let me say another thing around this thing before I go back to my major subject, is that we must, when I'm talking about we, I mean I and every other person that has agreed that the burden of this nation is resting upon their shoulders. I'm speaking because I agree that the burden of this nation, the future of this nation is depending on us. You may not be able to blame me and my generation, which is people who is in their mid-20s, about what is going on in Nigeria now. You will not be correct. But I've said it so many times and publicly, if you add another 10 years, you add another 20 years, you are going to blame us for the future of Nigeria. And what is causing this future is both the things we were able to do and the things we did not do. That is what is going to program. By the time you add another 15-20 years to my age, I'm going to get to 40 years. And by then, I'm no longer crying for my background does not work out. I've already become a background. And so what I'm trying to say is that there is a responsibility that is saddled on us, both leaders and followers, to produce the next leaders. And somebody can say, how do I produce? You might not necessarily be laboring towards it's your what's it called, the political aspect of draggy dream, but producing the next set of person. The responsibility is saddled on our shoulders. It's saddled on our shoulders to see that we produce the next set of leaders. Produce them. Whatever it's going to take, whether it's to infuse them in politics, whether it's for we ourselves to go down to grassroots politics, whether it's for we ourselves to remodify our curriculums and whatever we are teaching, whatever it's going to take for us to produce this set of person, we are going to submit in all humility. But we ought to know that there is a responsibility saddled on our neck. And this responsibility is that we, in all sincerity, must produce the next set of leaders. And I wouldn't also end this thing I'm saying without, first of all, also celebrating the marching forward of this set of persons to come and say what's going on in the country is not good, what's going on in the country is not great. But what I'm trying to say is that if the only thing or the most effective approach to what is going on in this country as it stands now is public protest, I say it again, and I'm not afraid or ashamed to say it, that what we are doing is a little or disservice to the kingdom, not just to the kingdom, also to the nation. And I trust that the leaders, whoever that is part of it, whoever that is part of moving it, they are wise enough. They are wise enough. I am not the only person speaking it, but I trust that they are wise enough to know that protest has never changed anything, not in this country. We were in this country from when protest became the major active approach to fighting the government and the likes. A good example was what happened in 2020. We are all in this country and we see that protest as the major approach to this thing has never changed anything. So coming out to shout, has never brought any change. So the change is more of what we do underground, where we might not be seen, where we might not be heard, where it might not look like we are doing things, but we know that we are doing things. Where it might not look like we are laboring, but we know we are laboring. And one of the things that we know about laboring is that scripture talked about that nobody lights up a candle and heats it under a bushel, except the candle is not lit. Once the candle is lit, it comes up. Once the candle is lit, it's going to be set up, and everybody is going to sit. And scripture said again that we are sitting set on a hill that cannot be hidden. So I dare say that provided that this is a city that we are building, the best of what we can do is to set it up on the hill, and it cannot be hidden. And in the last day, the mountain of the Lord's house is going to be exalted above every other mountain. So both whatever we are building, there is a mountain of the Lord that we ought to, in building this thing, exalt it above every other mountain. So anytime an ambassador of the kingdom is being sent, which I believe that what we have to do is to train person that is sendable, is to train persons that when they get to this part, they can represent. I want to bear witness to when I was in college, there is a particular uncle that is in school. No matter what is going on, whatever you want to complain, his major interest is seeing that in the next student union government, in the next leadership set of the students, one or two persons from the kingdom he represents. And the implication of this representation is that it has never been the same. Their result has never been the same. And what am I trying to say is that we ought to know that how we respond to matters is not how the world responds to matters. How we react to matters is not how the world reacts to the matters. We can react that, we can be reacting and responding to sound politically correct in the general ideology. We are part of what is going on, but we know that what brings the change is not crying out in the public. What brings the change is the formative things that we do underground. Is the formative things that we do underground. And to this, I say, like I said, I salute the job well done. However, I'm still trying to come out and say publicly that if the only thing we are doing is the public one that people are seeing, or if the only one we are doing actively is that one, then we are doing ourselves a disservice.